Welcome. Today, we're diving into the incredible story of Islamic civilization. And it's a story that's really defined by one powerful idea. What happens when you try to build a global empire based on a revolutionary new blueprint for society, but then you have to deal with, well, the messy reality of it all? So here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the radical political vision that kicked everything off. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the administrative machine you need to actually govern a massive empire. From there, we'll see how all of this forged a brand new kind of global society. And finally, we'll land on that constant tug-of-war between the ideal and the historical reality. Okay, let's start with that political vision. Because at its core was an idea that was, for its time, absolutely groundbreaking. Building a state not on shared bloodlines or land, but on a shared set of beliefs. And the whole thing was built around this concept of the caliphate, or khilafah. Now, don't just think of a king or an emperor. The idea here was way bigger. The leader was meant to be responsible for everything, both guiding the community's spiritual life and managing all its worldly affairs. It was a complete, all-encompassing vision for leadership. And you have to understand this was a fundamental break from the past. Before Islam, the glue that held society together was asabiyya, basically tribal loyalty. Your life revolved around your family, your clan. This new vision just threw that out the window. It proposed something totally different, loyalty to a shared faith, where leaders were supposed to be chosen through community consultation, or shura. But as you can see, that ideal got tested by reality almost immediately. The first leaders, the Rashidun, were actually chosen through that consultative process, but it didn't last. Pretty soon, under the Umayyads, it just shifted to a hereditary monarchy, passed down from father to son. Then the Abbasids came along and blended in ancient Persian ideas of divinely appointed kingship. And eventually, the single unified empire fractured into several competing caliphates. Of course, as the empire blew up, stretching from Spain all the way to the borders of India, ideals just weren't enough. You needed a serious, well-oiled administrative machine to actually run the whole show. And the state they built was incredibly sophisticated. It was divided into distinct provinces, had a formal justice system, a registered standing army, and a central treasury. And managing all of this was a complex bureaucracy of different departments called diwans that handled literally everything, from state records to the official postal service. Now, in theory, the chain of command was pretty straightforward. The caliph would appoint a governor, or a wali, to run each province. But in practice, as the empire got bigger and bigger, governors in those faraway regions naturally grew more powerful. And that tight central control started to loosen, giving way to a more decentralized system over time. Now, this was a pivotal moment. Under the Umayyad Caliph Abd al-Malik, a massive reform went down. The official language of the government was switched from Greek and Persian to Arabic, and totally new coins were minted with Islamic inscriptions. This wasn't just about paperwork, okay? This was a powerful statement, stamping a unique Arab-Islamic identity onto the entire imperial machine. So that's the political theory and the administrative reality. But how did all this actually affect the millions of people living inside this empire? What kind of society did it end up creating? Well, at the very heart of this new society was another profound ideal, the unity and equality of all humankind. The goal, the vision, was to build a global community where the primary thing connecting people wasn't where they were from or their ethnicity, but their shared faith. And the perfect example of this in action are the Mawali. This term refers to all the non-Arab people, we're talking Persians, Turks, Berbers, you name it, who converted to Islam. And they weren't treated as second-class citizens, far from it. They became the doctors, the scientists, the artists, and the administrators who were really the engine of the civilization's golden age. And you can literally see this shift happening over the centuries. In the early Umayyad period, the leadership was pretty much dominated by Arabs. But by the time the Abbasids were in power, the Mawali had risen to some of the most powerful positions in the empire, transforming what started as an Arab-led movement into a genuinely cosmopolitan civilization. And all of this brings us right back to where we started, to our central theme, this constant tension, this push and pull between the civilization's grand blueprint and the messy, complicated reality of actually building it. This table really just puts the whole story into sharp focus. On one hand, you have the principle. Governance was supposed to be about consultation, right? But the historical application became hereditary rule. The social ideal was the equality of all believers, but the reality? Social hierarchies and ethnic tensions. The foundation for justice was divine law, but in practice, the system could still be swayed by politics and power. At the end of the day, the story of Islamic civilization isn't a simple story of success or failure. It's the story of a constant struggle between its own highest ideals and the relentless challenges of history. And what's so remarkable is that those founding principles were so powerful that they continued to shape the culture and the conscience of the civilization, even when the political reality fell way short. Which leaves us with a pretty big question to think about, doesn't it?